next speaker is Dave Moss. He's CTO and founder of Blue Prism, who's going to talk a little bit about pragmatic approaches to getting started.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I think, where do you start? That's kind of where I'm at the moment. Lots and lots of ideas, lots of technologies, lots of different things I could do, but, how can I actually get going? Where can I start with this thing? So what I want to run by you today is, a few ideas, maybe a few roads that you can go down in terms of how you might bring AI to life, where you might start, how you might make a pragmatic approach to this kind of technology. So first of all, I'm going to talk about service industries. Okay, so I bought a mobile phone quite recently, took the phone home, I unboxed it, because that's what you do now. I didn't video the unboxing, but once I got through all the packaging, a little bit disappointed to hear that it was going to be 24 hours before I could actually use my phone on the network that I'd chosen. And that is typical of some of the experience that a lot of people have with service industries. These intangible products that we buy, insurance policies, bank accounts, gas and electricity, mobile phones. It's very, very difficult for those kinds of organizations to measure their productivity, okay? And productivity is really what I care about. It's about increasing productivity. And that means that we can use the same amount of people in our organization to produce more, okay? Or we can produce the same amount of goods more quickly. And that in turn delivers better products to our customers. They can customize their products, they get better service, and the wages, if you like, of the workers that work in those organizations increase. So a lot of economies are built on drives to increase productivity. One of the issues that I see with the service industries, because it's difficult to measure productivity, is it's quite stagnant. If you compare it to other industries like manufacturing, for example, you'll see their productivity increasing quite rapidly because they're harnessing really clever technologies to do it and to measure it. I want to apply the same principles to those service industries. So the first thing I want to do is try and understand what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to do with AI. What is it that we're actually trying to solve? In my example, I'd like to make it so that a customer can get their phone on the network the minute they open the box, right? That's the problem I'd like to solve. Secondly, instead of trying to learn this for myself from scratch, I want to look at references. Who else has been successful? What other sectors and organizations are good at increasing productivity, and what can I learn from them? Thirdly, I want to do this in steps. So I want to build some foundations that will allow me to experiment with different technologies so I can increase my productivity even further. And then I'm going to leverage those foundations and extend the scope of what I can do. So first of all, let's look at that process in terms of what I just did. So the reason that my phone takes 24 hours to join the network isn't because it's a super complex process with lots and lots of machines behind it. It's because there are lots and lots of little cottage industries in service centres all over the world, in Manila, in India, in the UK, where pockets of people are doing parts of that process. And the reason it takes my phone so long to get to the end of the queue is because lots of other people have bought a phone at the same time as me. It's a very manual process, okay? So how do I kind of leverage AI with this and technology with this to try and increase the productivity of what I'm doing? Well, I'm going to look at some other industries for references. I'm going to look at other approaches that have been successful. So I'm going to go way back in time, first of all, because the Industrial Revolution, a lot of that was built on cottage industries. We had small groups of people in their front room who were creating textiles and selling that locally. And what people realized was that to scale that up, we couldn't move all those people into a massive warehouse and have hundreds of them doing the same thing. We needed to industrialize what we were doing. We needed to do it at scale. So we built machines that copied the processes that people did exactly. They built 4 different types of machine that copied the 4 stages of the textile creating processes that were going on in those cottages. But they scaled it up massively so that they could produce more material in different colours and different patterns, and they could do it more quickly. And that's what the Industrial Revolution was built on in terms of scaling up those populations. It was increasing productivity. Okay? Look at manufacturing. It's a modern-day example of that Industrial Revolution. I think the productivity of manufacturing, particularly in automotive, has gone up something like 40% in the last 10 years. Okay, that's a really high increase when you compare it to financial services, which is more or less where it used to be 10 years ago. And here what they've done is they've used machines to replicate what people used to do on those production lines. So we employ roughly the same number of people in manufacturing and automotive than we did 100 years ago, but at the peak of the boom rather, but we produce an awful lot more vehicles. And you can also customize your vehicle. So as a consumer, you can choose what colour you want your roof, what colour you want your mirrors, what extras you'd like. You can watch it going along the production line. You can see when it's going to be delivered. It's great customer service, and you're getting a really good product in a much faster time in terms of how quick it takes to turn around. So let's then go away and look at service industries. And this is our factory, okay? This is where the guys who are servicing my mobile phone when I turn it on for the first time are sitting, okay? Some people call it a cube farm, I guess. And these people who are sitting at these desks, they're not all on the phone. They're doing the manual processes, the manual activities that we're looking at in terms of getting our phone from A to B, getting activated. And this is really inefficient, okay? How can we apply AI to this kind of environment? What service industries have been looking at doing over the last kind of 10 years is reducing the cost of the people that are doing this work. Okay, so they're offshoring it, for example. They're moving it to lower cost destinations to try and get the same amount of people, but put them in an office somewhere where it's cheaper, where you can pay the people less money to do that role. That isn't increasing productivity, and that isn't going to deliver better customer service, faster products, and better outcomes for our customers. Okay, that's not the approach that I would necessarily subscribe to. So if you look at those people, what are they doing? Well, our perception is the people in our organisations are deploying skill. They're interacting with our customers, they're making judgments, they're interpreting information, and then they're using our technology for the repetitive side of things, the business rules, the consistency, and the repeatability. That's what we think is going on. People at the top, systems at the bottom. But actually, what's happening is that the people are doing a bit of the job of the technology. The reason that we have those back offices, the reason that we've outsourced a lot of that work is because our processes change much more quickly than our systems can change. Okay? So we can launch a new phone in a few months. The regulator can ask us to do things differently in 3 to 6 months. We can launch a new product in a week or so. But to change a system, particularly one that's been around a long time and has got lots and lots of people using it, is a very complex process and takes a long time. Okay? So we end up using people to fill the gaps between what our technology was supposed to do and what it does now. And that's where we're losing out in terms of the productivity. And that's where, before we start layering AI on to start mirroring these skills of the people, I think we need to get the foundations right first of all to give us a platform that we can leverage and increase our productivity through that approach. So how do we build those foundations? Well, what I'd like to do is use those examples from manufacturing, from retailing, you know, the big Amazon warehouses where we have robots picking orders and delivering our packaging in 24 hours. You know, the reason that's possible is because they have robots doing this work for them. I'd like to take the same examples and deploy those examples into my particular industry, the service industry. Okay? Take the lessons that we've learned from elsewhere in terms of increasing productivity. And so what would a robot look like in a service centre? Okay, what would a robot look like in one of those cube farms that we just had a look at? Well, it's not going to be a physical robot, although we did have someone here earlier that does, you know, provide those physical robots. Imagine a playerless piano. Okay, that's the way I like to picture this. Okay, so you've got an existing instrument, you've got existing music, but you take the player away from the instrument and it continues to play. Okay, if we imagine that kind of concept in the service centre, we can take an existing process. We can take existing systems that we don't need to change, we don't need the integration or the heavy lifting. We can take the person away from the keyboard and get that process to run itself robotically. That's what robotic automation is. But then what we do is we don't think just about one of these things, we think about a whole team of them. Think about a virtual workforce, okay? So rather than having one robot on one desktop in one data center, let's put them all into a big server farm, let's put them in the cloud, okay? And let's give management the option to say, is this process a repeatable robotic process, or is it a skilled humanistic process? And I'm going to decide whether to give that process to my virtual workforce, powered by the robots, or if I'm going to give it to my human workforce, powered by the humans who are talking and giving empathy and skills and conversing with customers. It gives me more options, and what the virtual workforce provides is a way of increasing my productivity. So when you launch a new phone, and everyone wants that phone on the day of launch, you don't need to stand up 300 people in an office to deal with a week's worth of demand and then put them somewhere else. You can use technology to make that approach. But what's interesting about this is that you can use your existing applications and your existing processes and your existing systems to put this in place. You don't need to join the queue for the heavy lifting and the integration and the IT projects that you might need to do for previous initiatives. So it's a good way to get a foundation in place. So the idea is you put this virtual workforce in place. You have IT giving you the underwriting, the support, the governance, the compliance. They give you the servers and the 24/7 availability. But then it's the operation who are close to the processes that decide what they want to train their workforce to do. Do we want to do it on enabling your new phone? Do we want to put them on billing corrections? Do we want to put them on change of address? Where are the pain points? Where are the benefits that we're going to get from this process? And we can start pushing them through this production line. Once I've got that in place, I've built a foundation. I've got processes that are now digitized. One of the speakers that was on the stage this morning talked about, before you can really start thinking about AI and intelligence, you need to digitize your processes, okay? Well, how do you go about doing that when you're doing the processes with people in call centers, in data centers? That's an approach that will give you a framework, a foundation, where you've digitized your existing processes, got some benefit back from them, and then you can start to leverage intelligence. And one of the things that strikes me about AI outside of that robotic space, and some of the things we've been hearing about today, is there's a lot of it, okay? There's a lot of different applications, there's a lot of different approaches, a lot of terminology, a lot of words that people use in terms of what you can deploy. And for each one of those things, bringing it in can be costly to integrate with your existing applications. It can be slow to prove, it can take you quite a long time to get a proof of concept up and running and working. And it can be difficult to get your people to embrace that kind of change. It's also complex to embed it in your existing processes without disrupting a lot of the culture. So thinking of a better way of bringing those things into our organization is something that I'm quite interested in. The other thing that I want to talk about is the rate of change. So if we start now, how fast are things going to evolve by the time we've finished? If you think about autonomous vehicles, I think it's quite interesting that, just to give you an example of the rate of change, I think it was the US military that started what's called the DARPA Challenge in 2007. And they challenged some engineers to come up with an autonomous kind of self-driving vehicle that could drive 150 miles through the Mojave Desert, okay, in the US. And that was the challenge that was set out. That was just 8-9 years ago. None of the vehicles finished the route. In fact, the furthest any of the vehicles got was 7 miles, all right? And now we're at a state, just 7 or 8 years later, where we've got trucks, cars, driving on the roads. You can buy Teslas with AI and autonomous driving built into them. And it's advanced so quickly, it's unrecognizable from the vehicles that were in that DARPA challenge just 7 or 8 years ago. And that is going to continue in terms of the exponential development of these technologies. So we want to put them in a way where we can unplug and replug in new technologies as they evolve and come into the fore. We don't want to nail our colours to a particular mast in terms of putting one technology in and wiring it into our organisation. We want to be able to interchange it. And so what I'm keen on promoting is this idea of a robotic operating system, the intelligent enterprise. If you think about that virtual workforce being our execution harness, what you've now done is you've put your virtual workers, you've put your processes into the data center. You've digitized the processes that you want to affect. What you can then start to do is layer around different triggers and different outcomes, different technologies on top of that execution harness. So let's say, for example, I want to put in something that does some anomaly detection, okay, that looks for different kinds of transactions and maybe detects some fraud. Once I've detected that fraud, how am I actually going to go and affect it in my systems? How am I going to close these people's accounts or send them letters or block their cards? How am I going to execute off the back of what it finds? Things like OCR and ICR, if I've got some handwriting recognition technology or some document scanning and management technology, what am I then going to do once I've recognized that image and turned it into data? Okay? How am I going to affect the data itself? Things like speech recognition and intelligent messaging, I have a conversation with a customer and he tells me which phone he wants to buy based on the information I've given him on the tariff that he uses and his usage patterns. How am I going to issue him the new phone and put him on the new tariff? Well, how am I going to execute on the back of that? So having this idea of a harness, if you like, an operating system into which you can plug these triggers gives you the flexibility to use different ones in different scenarios whilst your processes are standardized. And then again on the outcomes, what you've got now, rather than a team of people in a data center doing these processes, you've got a centralized data repository that tells you all of your decisions that are being undertaken in your processes and all of the access paths and integrations that are being done in those systems. So you can do some really interesting things with that information. You can analyze your processes. You can look at the kind of outcomes that you're getting. You can use that to derive suggestions for better products that you could offer, you can offer different products to different customers. And you can actually analyze some of the patterns and some of the data to improve your processes and improve what you offer and to make you more competitive as an organization. So rather than looking at these processes as things that you just want to outsource or offshore because you just want to do it more cheaply, look at using those processes as a lever to increasing the competitiveness and the differentiation of your organization and layering AI on top of that. So where do we want to get to? I think earlier on I showed this slide where the idea at the moment where you have people giving the skills and the empathy and the technology giving you the repeatability and the consistency. And where we're actually at the moment is people doing this technology gluing, if you like. They're doing the swivel chairing, they're helping your technology deliver the processes that you want it to do today versus the ones it was designed to deliver yesterday. Where I'd like to get to is this target state, where we're using intelligence and technology to apply our business rules and our consistency and our repeatability, but we're also using it to make decisions and to interact and to give us understanding of our customers. And then we can maximize the use of our people. We can use them for the kind of skills, for the empathy, for the understanding that we want to use that customer base for. And it's not about displacing staff, okay? At the moment, if you call your bank or if you call your mobile phone provider, you will be on hold for a period of time. I've waited on hold for 40 minutes to talk to someone about just changing a direct debit with my organization. So let's not pretend that there are people sat waiting for the phone to ring. They're so tied up in this stuff that you're queuing, waiting for them to wrestle the systems with someone before they can talk to you. So, in terms of getting to that target state, I think that's an ambition that we should all share and something that we can achieve by maximizing the skills of the people that we have rather than displacing them. And I think the benefits are across the board. In terms of customers, they get better products, they get more accuracy, they get a faster response, they get consistency and flexibility from our providers. Organizations get consistency of treatment, their productivity increases, they grow, and our employees get to deliver value to the organization. They get a position of leadership. They're using their human skills. They're empathizing, they're adding value, they're helping a customer rather than wrestling with different systems and feeling a bit like a robot. We're trying to take the robot out of the human rather than replace the human with this process. And so if we think back to this process, as it stands today, lots of disparate steps, lots of different people in different organizations in different geographies. Where would we like to get to? What I'd like to see is some intelligence filtering and interpreting the requests that come through from the customers, people engaging and talking and appraising and interpreting what the customer wants, and more people doing that than we have currently, so we're not queuing, and then a shorter process in terms of the actual execution of that. Okay, so using software robots alongside people, alongside artificial intelligence to go and enact on this process and deliver better products to our customers in a shorter time frame. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And Dave, I particularly love that